Dear students, today we are going to study chapter 20, Fathers and Doctors of the Church commemorated in the 5th Diptych. Diptychs or the Great Intercession is an important part of our Holy Eucharist. There are 6 diptychs in our Holy Eucharist. In the first 3 we remember the living, whereas in the last 3 diptychs we remember the departed souls. In the 5th diptych, we commemorate the spiritual fathers who formulated the fundamental dogmas of the Church and laid the foundation of the spiritual tradition. We remember 23 such spiritual fathers who lived during the first 7 centuries of our church history, as well as 3 proclaimed saints in the Malankara Church. Dear students, now let us see an overview of the 5th diptych. We commemorate the Church Fathers in all Holy Eucharist because they have maintained, delivered and entrusted to us the Apostolic and Orthodox faith of the undivided Church. They have fallen asleep in holiness and taken repose in the abode of saints. We seek the intercession of the Church Fathers who participated in the first 3 great councils. These 3 great councils are Council of Nicaea, Council of Constantinople and Council of Ephesus. These Church Fathers proclaimed the faith of the Church and their principles were accepted in these councils. The Council of Chalcedon had rejected the arguments of our Church Fathers and had made an alternate proclamation of faith. Hence, we remember the Church Fathers who upheld the true faith in this council and suffered persecution. We remember the doctors of the Church who composed our liturgy and hymns in the early centuries and who founded the monastic movement. Finally, we also remember the saints of Malankara Church, Eldomar Basilius, Saint Gregorios of Parumala and Mar Dionysius of Vattascheril. Now let us study the Church Fathers before the Great Council of Nicaea. These Church Fathers are Saint James of Jerusalem, Ignatius of Antioch, Saint Clement of Rome and Saint Dionysius of Alexandria. First, let us study Saint James of Jerusalem. He is also known as Brother of Jesus Christ. The 5th diptych describes him as Venerable Saint James, the first Archbishop of Jerusalem, Apostle and Martyr. Saint James, along with Saint Peter and Saint John, were also known as Pillars of Jerusalem. The famous liturgy of Saint James is known after him. Saint Ignatius of Antioch. This apostolic father was a bishop of Antioch. Antioch is renowned as the cradle of Christianity during the missionary journeys of Saint Paul. And Saint Peter had founded the Christian church in Antioch. Although apostles and apostolic fathers like Saint Paul, Saint John, Saint Barnabas and Saint Simon worked in this church, Saint Ignatius is the much revered among the Syrian fathers. It is said that he was the child whom Christ set in the midst of the disciples as an example of humility. Hence, he was often described as Theophorus or God-bearer and firebranded. Saint Ignatius speaks on the greatness of the Holy Eucharist. Also gives emphasis on the threefold ministry of episcopa, presbyter and deacon in the church. Saint Ignatius became a martyr in AD 107 when he was thrown to lions in Rome. Saint Clement of Rome. This apostolic father was the disciple and successor of Saint Peter. He became the Bishop of Rome at the turn of 1st century AD. His epistles speak about priesthood and the holy sacraments. Saint Dionysius of Alexandria. He was the head of the theological school of Alexandria and later he was raised as bishop. When plague broke out in Alexandria in AD 252, he looked after the afflicted and the dying with the support of priests and deacons. His works are well known for the interpretations of the Gospels of St. Luke and St. John as well as the book of Revelation. Dear children, now let us study Church Fathers of the 4th century who are remembered in the 5th Diptych. These Church Fathers are Saint Athanasius of Alexandria, Saint Julius of Rome, Saint Basil of Caesarea, Saint Gregory of Nyssa and Saint Chrysostom. Saint Athanasius of Alexandria participated in the Synod of Nicaea as the secretary of Mar Alexander. When Arian heresy shook the church, it was this young theologian and scholar who fought for the sake of true faith. He was a disciple of Saint Anthony, the father of monasticism. In AD 328, he was raised to the position of a bishop. His theological writings include The Mystery of Incarnation of Jesus Christ, Essay on the Holy Spirit, and Life of Antony. Saint Julius of Rome. Saint Julius was the Bishop of Rome. He was a good friend of Saint Athanasius of Alexandria and strongly opposed the heresy of Arius. It was this church father who separated the two feasts, Christmas and the Epiphany, which were earlier celebrated together. Saint Basil of Caesarea. This Cappadocian father is also known as Saint Basil the Great. He became the Bishop of Caesarea in AD 370. He composed rules for monastic life. He founded monasteries, hostels and hospitals for the poor. His book on the Holy Spirit is even today an influential book. His teachings led to the triumph of the doctrine of the Holy Trinity. Saint Gregory of Nyssa. This Cappadocian father was the brother of Saint Basil the Great, Saint Peter of Pontus, and Saint Macarena. He became the Bishop of Nyssa in AD 371. He participated in the Council of Constantinople and was a prominent theologian who represented the Eastern churches. He authored many books such as Sermon of Religious Instruction, Divinity of Holy Spirit, The Life of Moses, Lord's Prayer, the biography of Saint Macarena, as well as interpretation of biblical books like Song of Songs. Saint John Chrysostom. This Cappadocian father was a Greek preacher who adopted the method of Greek rhetoric in his speeches. Hence, he was known as the Golden Tongued. His sermons based on the book of Genesis, the Gospels of St. Matthew and St. John, and the epistles of St. Paul are widely accepted. In AD 398, he was elected as the Patriarch of Constantinople. A quick recap of this chapter. In this chapter, we learned about the church fathers of the early church remembered in the fifth diptych of the Holy Eucharist. All these church fathers had been illustrious, divine, and holy. These church fathers entrusted to us the apostolic and orthodox faith and laid foundation of the faith proclaimed through the great councils of Nicaea, Constantinople, and Ephesus. These church fathers rejected the council of Chalcedon and hence suffered persecution. Let us commemorate all of them and seek their intercession. Thank you.